Welcome into 5-Wide Fantasy. Today, getting to our must-add players, heading to week 16 of the fantasy football season. If you're still with me, if you're still watching this video, it means you're feeling pretty confident or you've already clinched your spot into the semifinals. A big week here. We'll be looking at players at every single position, and honestly, we'll be focused completely on matchups, whether it's a guy to play this week, whether it's a guy to stash for next week. And we're, again, going to be focusing on players well below 50% rostered, other than our quarterbacks that are closer to that 50% mark. And then quickly, before we jump into the players, there are some guys that we've talked about in previous videos, talked about last week, that I'm not going to go over and mention them again. If you've been watching the videos, you know how I feel about them. But if you're new to the channel, guys like a Noah Brown, guys like a Zamir White, who could potentially have another week as the starter, those are guys I would add over the guys we're talking about. But again, these players I've talked about over and over, and they're close to that 50% mark, so not going to talk about them today, but I do have a bunch of players for you. If you guys enjoyed today's video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well if you are new, and let's jump into these players. First up, we'll go to the running back position with Justice Hill. He's 13% rostered now with the Baltimore Ravens. We saw Keaton Mitchell go down with a knee injury that will keep him out for the remainder of the season. Tough to see, because I really liked his talent, thought he was a super talented player, explosive player for this Ravens offense. But Hill now going to step into the role as the primary receiving back moving forward. And I think he'll likely find himself seeing, 6 to 8 carries per game the rest of the year. And as well, you look at the backfield between him and Gus Edwards. Edwards is the guy they want to go to, convert scoring opportunities. But this was a team before Keaton Mitchell really arrived on the scene that did kind of ride the hot hand between Hill and Edwards, because I don't think either one of these guys are above replacement level. They're basically replacement level players that plenty of guys can put together the production these guys are. So I don't think Hill will be scoring all the touchdowns. I think Edwards will definitely be doing that. But you could see Hill, if playing well, get some more opportunities. And as well, we're looking at matchups with San Francisco and Miami for the next 2 weeks. Very tough matchups, but those are also competitive matchups where we should see Hill get on the field in those potential pass-catching situations. So not a high ceiling with Hill, but there is some intrigue here when it comes to what we've seen with a little bit less of a split in this offense between Hill, Mitchell, and Edwards. We've seen Hill still getting some opportunities. Now we'll see him even more here as we move to the rest of the season. Next up, we go to Isaiah Spiller of the Los Angeles Chargers. He is completely 0% is what I see at Yahoo. So he's available in basically every league. You're going to be telling me, Tyler, why would I add him in a matchup with the Buffalo Bills? I'm not telling you to be playing him against the Bills here, but let me tell you why there's some interest from me in terms of stashing him away. So the coaching change. We see Brandon Staley is out. Kellen Moore still going to be calling plays for the offense. But what does the loss of Staley do when it comes to impacting personnel decisions at the running back spot? We saw the team, start to make some changes in terms of how they split up their carries. We saw Austin Eckler cede opportunities to a little bit with Joshua Kelly. Joshua Kelly had a fumble in the game last week, and then we saw pretty much Isaiah Spiller exclusively as the running back, and then we saw Austin Eckler stay on the field and get some work in passing downs. Now, Spiller's a capable guy when it comes to being a pass catcher as well. Did that at Texas A&M before he arrived into the NFL, and has been sitting on the bench for the majority of his 2 seasons in the league. He was a 4th-round pick by the Chargers. Easton Stick now the starting QB, which is going to lead to an offense that's going to be more run-heavy in those neutral game scripts. Now, the Bills, unlikely to give them that neutral game script, probably much like the Raiders, will handle this matchup pretty easily. They're like a 12.5-point favorite in this game. Spiller got some touches last week, 16 carries, just 50 yards, so wasn't super efficient with his opportunities. But the reason that I'm stashing him is the matchup with the Denver Broncos to close out the season. Denver, the worst run defense in the entire league. You saw the Lions run the ball at will on Saturday night. Basically, every team has. They're giving up over 5 yards per carry on the season. If Spiller is given an even further increased role in this offense, because again, Eckler has been absolutely awful. Both him and Kelly have been awful. If he gets continues to get the lead opportunity, there is a scenario where Spiller is valuable, and that's that matchup with Denver to close out your fantasy championship game. So something to think about. Again, not a high priority ad, player that not a lot of people will be paying attention to, but if you stash him, hang on to him, it could pay off for you in the last week of the season. Okay, moving to our wide receivers. I want to start with Parker Washington of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's 5% rostered. Definitely super available. Another injury strikes this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. First it was Christian Kirk. Now it's Zay Jones with a hamstring injury, likely to be out for the remainder of the season. That is super impactful for this offense. And for Washington, should get him on the field even more. He's been playing with the Christian Kirk's injury, but now should see, not be leaving the field over Zay Jones, with Jones now being out. Washington saw 6 targets on 26 routes run against Baltimore. He also had touchdowns in back-to-back games the last 2 weeks before this week. He's a capable contributor. I liked his talent coming out of Penn State. Do think he's a great fit for this offense out of the slot, and we're seeing those targets and those opportunities in the red zone. That could be super valuable with Trevor Lawrence and this offense. And this week in particular, we get Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay provide some real intrigue to potentially start him because they take away the run game, great against the run, and as a result, they're 28th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers on the season. That's a bottom 4, bottom 5 unit. So I think Washington potentially could be started in over some players that have some more difficult matchups. And I think for Washington, it's a risky guy to be playing, obviously, in this matchup, but he also provides a lot of mystery and unknown because of a potentially elevated role, and this offense can get back on track to scoring some points after a tough game against the Ravens this past week. Maybe the player I'm most interested in this week is Jameson Williams. He's 22% rostered from the Detroit Lions. What I love to see in the matchup with Denver on Saturday night was highest route participation of his entire career, 72.2% of dropbacks he was on the field for. So you love to see that. Turn that into 7 targets, 4 receptions, and 47 yards. So not a big game by any means, but in a game that was won in blowout fashion, wasn't really needed. Williams is a player that is known for big play potential. His average depth of target is 17.4 yards, and 33% of the targets, a third of the targets he's had this season, have been for 20-plus air yards. He hasn't hit on a lot of these plays. He has not hit on. I think he's only like 2 receptions on these 11 targets, but there's only a few players in the league that have such a high percentage of their targets come deep downfield, and that's super valuable because this is a player who, as he increases his route participation and as he increases the amount of targets he's getting, it's going to be super valuable when we get even more of these deep targets. Final 2 matchups of the year, Minnesota and Dallas. Dallas obviously has played quite well defensively this season, but we've seen when they play capable offenses, they're not quite the unit that many might think they are. Minnesota, a team that's definitely improved, but they're very good against the run, not as good against the pass, so we could see some volume here that Jameson Williams could take advantage of. Again, risky play, but super high upside. Washington's a player that, I could see some upside with him. When you look at what he's done scoring touchdowns, Williams is a player that could hit a couple of explosive plays and really win you a week. So definitely think you need to add him. He's probably my top add for me. Depending on your needs, if you didn't have one specific need, he's probably the player I'd be looking to target the most. Okay, moving to tight end. Going to Hunter Henry, who's 24% rostered. He's got 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Actually could have had 4, but he had one called back on a offensive holding. So we really could have had 2 week-winning type of performances from Hunter Henry at the tight end spot. Now, the reason I'm super excited about adding him, I don't always, see 2 great games and think I got to have this guy, but the reason I got to have Hunter Henry is the matchup with Denver this coming week, who is the worst fantasy defense to tight ends, dead last in fantasy points allowed. They're giving up almost 72 receiving yards per game to the tight end position. That makes Hunter Henry super valuable because this isn't a player that's been super consistent, yards-wise, but now we have that little bump in this particular matchup. What he has done well is find ways to score touchdowns and earn targets in the red zone. So that makes me feel really good. This Bill O'Brien offense is utilizing the tight ends heavily. We're seeing 2 tight ends in the field a ton. And with the way that the Patriots have been dealing with injuries at the wide receiver spot, it's no surprise that Henry's getting even more involved here. So feel good about him as a player pretty widely available at the tight end spot that you can immediately plug in and have to play this week in this matchup. Now we move along to quarterbacks. I've got 2 for you. We'll start with Baker Mayfield, who's 54% rostered. Yes, over the threshold, but I find that quarterbacks, with your 2 QB leagues, the numbers when you're in a 1 QB league will tell you that Baker Mayfield's not really rostered pretty much at all. Here, though, must be rostered. He's the QB 15 on the season, actually not bad, and having a pretty decent year by the numbers. He had 380 passing yards and 4 touchdowns on Sunday as well against the Packers. So if you had him and you were playing him, you're very, very happy with that. I can't imagine a lot of you guys were playing him, though. Looking into the numbers, too, has thrown 2+ touchdowns in 6 of his last 8 games. If you get 2 touchdowns and 250 passing yards and you're streaming the quarterback position, you'll be pretty happy with that. So he gives you a good chance to do so and an even better chance to do so with Jacksonville. The Jags, the 3rd most fantasy points per game they're allowing to quarterbacks on the season. It's because they've been a pretty stout run defense. Teams have been throwing the ball at a really high volume against them. So you're going to see a pretty good floor here with Mayfield because passing volume should be pretty high. He's consistently given you a couple of passing touchdowns a game with the struggles from the Bucs and running the football. So he's probably one of the best streamers for you in this particular week if you can get him. But if you can't, Derek Carr is 39% rostered. He's coming off another great week as well. He threw 3 touchdowns in their win over the Giants. Not as much to say about Carr. QB 18 on the season, there can be some real lows. There, the potential of not throwing those passing touchdowns has certainly come to fruition in other weeks, but recently has hit his stride a little bit here from a fantasy asset perspective. And the Rams, they get on Thursday night. The Rams are 25th in fantasy points allowed per game to quarterback. So this is a pretty good matchup for him. Again, this is someone where if you cannot get Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr would be that second option for me. And then potentially as well, I'm not sure. It looks like Geno Smith won't play on Monday night, but if Geno Smith was back for this coming week, he could be another player to add as well. All right, those are my favorite must-add players heading into week 16 of the fantasy football season. Guys, if you have questions about players, should you drop them, or other potential players to add that I haven't talked about, definitely drop those down below in the comment section. Would love to answer and chat with you guys there. If you guys enjoyed today's video, hit that like button for me. Would really appreciate that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.